Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Flux for Professional Creatives. Today we'll be taking a look at why developing complex workflows for Flux kind of sucks right now. Those who know me know that I don't shy away from creating complex pipelines and workflows. This, for example, was the workflow for relighting products that I released a while ago using SDXL and IC Light. And even if there's tons of nodes and connections, the underlying nodes and tech was quite consequential. But when it comes to Flux, there are so many different issues that need to be tackled when you want to construct difficult workflows and pipelines, and from so many different angles. For example, in regard to the commercial license for dev, or random errors popping up that shouldn't really be there, random proprietary node suites with kind of custom pipelines that really make no sense, confusing or lacking documentation, and nonsensical results, and so much more, that I started asking myself one question. Is it me? Am I terrible at Flux? Or is the whole dev environment kind of trying to figure out what they wanted to and be? So today I thought I'd start by tackling all these things one by one, starting with the license. Flux has two different licenses, one for dev and one for Schnell. And while the Schnell license is a standard one, the Apache 2.0 license, that allows basically anything in terms of commercial use, the dev version has a custom license. Now, much can be said about custom licenses, and it has been said a lot, especially during the launch of SD3. But dev's license in particular kind of baffled me, because a ton of people on online forums like Reddit or on Discords were interpreting this license in a more permissive way in terms of commercial use, while other people I look up to, like Matteo, Latent Vision here on YouTube, who is the dev behind IPAdapter Plus and Advanced, amongst other things, are interpreting this license in way more restrictive terms. Taking Matteo again as an example, he demonetized his latest video on Flux out of concerns for the commercial license for dev. On my end, I actually contacted my lawyer in order to properly understand the license, as well as Black Forest Labs. And at the same time, I created a post on Reddit which gained some traction, explaining differences between the community's opinions and my lawyer's opinions. My lawyer's opinion is basically that there's no possible commercial use of the models and output when using the dev version, regardless of the clause at Article 2D, where the license states that Black Forest Lab has no ownership rights over outputs. And that's because for my lawyer, the except as expressly prohibited herein refers to the non-commercial purpose, stated in Article 1C of the license. Now, this would be in line with Matteo and other people more restrictive readings of the license, and in the thread we actually got another person whose lawyer stated the same thing. We had one lawyer who was saying the opposite, that the model itself and its usage and its training was under the non-commercial purpose agreement, whereas the outputs are commercially usable apart from training purposes. And we got another user who said that they contacted Black Forest Labs for their advertising pipelines, and Black Forest Labs said that commercial usage in that case was okay. Now, I still haven't received any reply from Black Forest Labs. I wrote them an email last week and followed up a few days after, specifically asking for two cases. That is, if a software as a service company could use dev as the backbone of their service, and if a creative agency of sorts could sell the outputs to clients. But regardless of the actual answers we will get, I hope eventually, and regardless of your own interpretation of the license agreement, it's this kind of uncertainty that derives from custom licenses that is hindering development on this fantastic model. In the wake of this uncertainty, we still got a couple of teams like XLab's AI and InstantX who are developing models, mainly for dev, with honestly mixed results. While InstantX ControlNet Union is absolutely fantastic, honestly, at least when using text-to-image pipelines. To be quite fair, I cannot say the same for XLab's products. Their ControlNets are, to be quite frank, subpar, and their IPAdapter is a far cry from Matteo's own implementation of IPAdapter Plus for SDXL and 1.5. It seems to me like XLab's approach is more like being the first to market regardless of actually having a good product. And that, to be honest, is not an approach I like. And this can be seen as well in their quote-unquote documentation. This, for example, is the workflow example for the new IPAdapter for Flux. And the more you look at this image, the more errors you will find. And to be honest, they are quite baffling. From the completely disconnected load flux LoRa node over here and load flux ControlNet node over here, to the image crop node going nowhere and the VAE encode node going nowhere over here, the overlapping nodes hiding what is basically a custom sampler that is both lacking inputs that we are used to and usually need, like schedulers and samplers, and adding inputs that are documented basically nowhere, like TrueGS, which I guess is guidance scale for Flux, or image to image strength, which in this case is set to 0, and I'm not sure what it means, and I will never be sure about because there's no documentation whatsoever. Or this example workflow, where we can see that the load diffusion model for the unit is set to Flux1Dev FP8, which is a custom quantized version by XLab, but then the load flux ControlNet node is using as model name FluxDev, even if that same node has a FluxDev FP8 option. So why do I have to use that? When do I have to use that? All questions that are basically answered nowhere. And all these issues arise even before attempting to construct complex workflows and generate. They just end up becoming way more apparent when someone starts actually building. And once you are actually building, the errors keep piling on. This, for example, is the InstantX Flux Union ControlNet and its implementation for comfyui. Now, using the old V1 version of the model, we get actually the couch here with its depth in the setting that I've asked for, which is in the middle of Central Park on a beautiful sunny day. But once I switch to the V2, the new version of the same model, we get this result instead. The couch is still there, the depth is still there, but the background is nowhere to be found. At least the background that I've asked for. Moreover, this is a text-to-image pipeline, because I'm using an empty SD3 latent image node. But if, let's say, I wanted to do an image-to-image workflow by using a VAE encode node set on the resized image of the couch, I would get this error. 116.52.278.2 is invalid for input of size 261248. That makes absolutely no sense. But if we bypass the ControlNet, there we go, no error anymore. Why can I not use an image-to-image pipeline with a ControlNet? I don't know, because there's no documentation for it. It makes absolutely no sense. Or let's say I wanted to use an IPAdapter. Well, first of all, I would have to settle for something that I'm not used to, that is lacking some of the parameters that I'm used to, like attention mask, for example. But hey, it's a beta, so that's fine. But once we generate, we are not getting good results. Now, this might be because the strength is low, 0.2, so let's up that a bit to 0.8 around the strength that was showed on XLab's workflow example. But with that strength, we get some terrible results. Now, might this be an issue with the ControlNet that is not from XLabs? Or might this be because we're using the stock case sampler node and not this XLabs sampler that is half hidden over here? Once again, I do not know because there's no documentation. But let's say it's because of the sampler, and let's use the XLab sampler set without a ControlNet for starters. Let's hit QPrompt. And while it generates, we can see how here in the inputs we are lacking, for example, scheduler and samplers. So we cannot set those. Why is that? Are they set for us? We do not know because there's no documentation. And the result we get is closer to the original image that is used as a source for the IPAdapter, but still it's quite bad. Looks more like a bad painting than a photo. But hey, that might be because the TrueGS, which I don't know what it stands for, is set at 3, so maybe we should set that at 2, but that doesn't work either. At least not very well. I like the previous picture better. But still, this doesn't solve the fact that we want to use a ControlNet. So hey, maybe we can hook up the XLab custom sampler to the ControlNet for the Union model. But no, it appears that it's absolutely making no difference in the generation at all. It's like the ControlNet is not even there. So maybe we can use the XLab sampler in conjunction with XLab's ControlNets by using their own nodes. And why is that? Because there is a ControlNet condition input, which is radically different to what we are used to, since ControlNet conditioning usually follows the conditioning pipeline. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and hit qprompt. While we wait for the generation, we can contemplate why there's 3 different options for FluxDev, FluxDev FP8 and Flux Schnell. For example, I am using the full dev model but at FP8 weight D type in order to not run out of memory. So should I use the full dev option or the dev FP8 version? But then why in their workflow they're using the FP8 version of the unit and the FluxDev option on the ControlNet and not the FP8 version? We do not know. You guessed it, because there is no documentation. But even with all that, we get an even worse result. Maybe I got it wrong, maybe I should have used the FP8 version. Or maybe I got it wrong again, and I should use FluxDev and a true GS, like in their example, at 3.5. But at that point, if I am using their own IPAdapter, where they suggest true GS to be set at 2, which is it? 2 or 3.5? Or are the ControlNets and the IPAdapter exclusive? You cannot use both of them at the same time. All these questions remain without an answer, because you guessed it, no documentation. All that remain is a very bad image, and the frustration of having learned nothing at all from all these mistakes and errors. Now, this could very well be one of those infamous skill issue moments that I think I have spent well enough time in the space to be warranted one final consideration. I don't think we need custom stuff for pipelines and standards that we are very well used to by now. If these were the first few days from 2 years ago, when 1.5 just landed and everyone was trying to figure things out, then I would be very happy with experimenting things that might lead to nowhere. I would expect total lack of documentation, I would expect having to break things in order to understand them better. But 2 years later, this is simply not acceptable. There are entire production environments that have been built on top of these nodes, these models, these pipelines, these conventions, these standards. My proposal is that we follow what we have done up till now. Clear licensing, complete modularity and compatibility, and standard practices when developing nodes and models. Now, of course, this is an open source space, so you cannot really enforce all these things, but it is up to each and every one of us who develop things for the space to progress things in an ordinate way. Otherwise, it just gets confusing, frustrating, and quite honestly, unprofessional. So let me know in the comments if this has been your experience as well, or if this is just me being an old man yelling at clouds. This is going to be all for today. I will continue building amidst all these frustrations with Flux, because I still believe that it's the best model we have access to right now. My name is Andrea Baioni. You can find me on Instagram at Reasonabushi or on the web at andreabaioni.com. And same as always, I will be seeing you next week.